My wife filmed me during a PTSD flashback, then sent it to child services and said I was too unstable to raise our kids. When I begged her father-in-law for help, he laughed and said, "Now we've got all the proof." That's when I knew I was alone. I knew what I had to do, and I knew it wouldn't be pretty. I knew something was off the second I opened the door. After 14 months on a storm-ravaged offshore rig, surviving one explosion, 2 evacuations, and more sleepless nights than I could count, I expected my family to run into my arms. I pictured my wife, Tessa, wrapping herself around me, the kids squealing, maybe even the dog barking in celebration. Instead, I got silence. Milo and Emma sat cross-legged on the couch, their eyes locked on handheld game consoles. They didn't even glance up. The house smelled like air freshener and unfamiliar food. No trace of my wife's usual lavender oil or the garlic I used to love coming home to. "Tessa," I called out, stepping over a pair of rollerblades in the hallway. I dropped my duffel bag with a thud that echoed too loudly in the strange quiet. A second later, her parents appeared from the kitchen. "Oh, Neil," her mother said, arms outstretched like we were long-lost friends. "Look at you." Her dad followed, nodding solemnly. "Glad you made it back in one piece." The way they smiled, too wide, too rehearsed, made my stomach twist. I let myself be hugged, slapped on the back, and then awkwardly peeled away. "Where's Tessa?" I asked. "She's upstairs, sorting things," her mom said vaguely, like that explained everything. Emma finally looked up. "Hey, Dad," she mumbled, but her eyes drifted back to her screen before I could respond. Milo didn't even look up. I tried to laugh it off. "That's the welcome I get after over a year?" No one answered. I made my way upstairs. The bedroom door was open, and there she was, my wife of 11 years, kneeling next to a stack of taped cardboard boxes, our wedding photo sitting face down on the nightstand. "Tessa." She looked up slowly, her face calm, too calm. "Neil, you're early." I blinked. "Early? I've been gone for over a year. I'm lucky I didn't drown out there. I told you I was flying in today." She nodded and stood, wiping her hands on her jeans. I thought we'd have more time." "Time for what?" She stepped aside and gestured to the closet, half empty. "My half. I'm moving out." For a moment, I thought she was joking. I waited for the punchline. It never came. "I don't understand," I said. "You begged me to take this job. You said the offshore pay would fix everything." Her jaw tightened. "That was before you left us for 14 months. You knew the risks. I called every week, sent money every month, and we never knew if you'd even make it back." She crossed her arms. "The kids need stability, Neil. They need someone who's here." I stared at her, trying to process. "So you're just leaving? With your parents?" She nodded. "We're staying with them while I figure out our next step." I turned away from her, walked to the window, heart pounding. "You knew I took that job to get us out of debt. We agreed. You abandoned your family," she snapped. "You chose oil rigs over your kids." That hit harder than the explosion that nearly killed me. "You told me to go. You said it was our shot at a better future." She didn't reply. Downstairs, I could hear her parents whispering and boxes being moved. I turned back to her. "Why now? Why wait until I came back?" She looked tired. Not guilty, not sad, just tired. "Because I didn't want to do it over the phone. So instead, she let me come home to find out like this. After everything I'd risked, for her, for the kids, she'd packed me out of their lives. And I didn't even see it coming." The next evening, I tried to reclaim some sense of normal. I went out and bought groceries with what little cash I had. Lamb, potatoes, onions, the spices I always used. It was my thing. My famous curry lamb stew. The kids used to beg for it on weekends. I thought maybe that would stir something in them. The house still smelled like unfamiliar candles and other people's habits. I was technically allowed to stay until the weekend, but it already didn't feel like mine. Tessa hovered while I cooked, arms folded across her chest, her phone never far from reach. Her parents sat at the dining table like they ran the place. Milo and Emma were at their usual seats, consoles glowing in front of their faces. I set the bowls down, steaming and fragrant. "Dinner," I said, keeping my voice light. Emma glanced up. "What is it?" "Lamb stew. Your favorite, remember?" "Oh," she said, eyes flicking to Tessa before she picked up her spoon. Milo just poked at his. I sat across from them and tried to smile. "So school? You guys still in soccer?" "Soccer ended," Emma said without looking at me. "Oh, right." I looked to Milo, who was squirming in his chair. He picked up his bowl and reached for a napkin, but it slipped from his hands. Stew splashed across the table and onto his shirt. It wasn't much, but the bowl clattered loud enough to jolt me. And suddenly, I wasn't at the dinner table anymore. I was back on the rig. "Mayday, mayday," I whispered, ducking under the table instinctively, covering my head. "Red Zone 1 breached. Pressure valve compromised. Emergency, evac." The voices of my crewmates rang in my ears, the hiss of steam and the screech of metal tearing apart. Then silence. I blinked. I was crouched beneath the dining table, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my neck. I looked up slowly. Tessa stood completely still, her eyes wide, not with concern, but calculation. Her mother had her phone out, angled discreetly toward me, recording, not even pretending to hide it. Milo's eyes were wide too, but scared. Emma looked frozen. I tried to stand, bumping the table. "I'm fine. Just reflex." Tessa said nothing. Neither did her mom. I backed away, hands up, forcing a weak laugh. Sorry, thought I heard something. It's the, never mind. They watched me the way you watch a stranger in public having a breakdown. Cold, distant, like I wasn't even human. Just something to be managed. That night, I barely slept. Every noise made me jump. The stew went untouched. The next morning, I came down to an empty table. The kids were gone. Tessa's father was sitting by the door with a smug kind of calm. Took them for the weekend, he said, sipping his coffee. They'll be better off. He handed me an envelope without a word and left. I opened it. School forms, temporary custody updates, and something else. A folded note, scrawled in her mother's handwriting. Now we have what we need. I sat down hard, and for the first time since the rig exploded, I felt true panic. 2 days later, a knock came at the door. Not a neighborly tap. A hard, rhythmic pounding. The kind that brings court orders and news nobody wants to hear. I opened it to find a woman in a gray coat, holding a leather folder against her chest. Behind her, a beige sedan idled in the driveway. Neil Dawson. Yes, she nodded, her voice polite but distant. I'm Angela Marin, with the Family Safety Agency. May I come in? I stepped aside slowly, every nerve on edge. She sat down on the edge of the couch, opened the folder, and laid out a single sheet of paper and a USB drive. We received a submission last week regarding concerns about your behavior around your children. I've reviewed the materials. I need to discuss them with you. I felt something twist in my gut. What materials? She plugged the USB into her tablet and tapped the screen. The video started. It was me, ducking under the dining table, whispering emergency codes. My hand shaking, my voice cracking. I watched in silence as the recording ended. She tapped the screen again. This one was me pacing in the garage, talking to myself, repeating pressure numbers and system checks out loud, a habit I had picked up offshore to stay sharp. A third clip, me muttering in my sleep, jerking upright in bed, soaked in sweat. I leaned forward. Where did you get these? They were submitted anonymously, but metadata on the files indicates they came from a household account associated with Tessa Dawson. So she had been recording me for weeks, maybe months. They're out of context, I said quickly. I wasn't hurting anyone. I've been through trauma, yes, but I've never. She held up a hand gently. I'm not here to judge your experiences, but the concern isn't just the videos. It's the claim that your children feel unsafe around you. I stood up. That's not true. That's not true. Just then, Tessa appeared in the hallway. She wasn't startled to see the agent. She looked like she'd been waiting for this moment. Her arms were crossed, a slow, almost serene look on her face. Neil, she said softly, like she was delivering a eulogy. The kids are scared. We all are. Behind her, her parents stood in the foyer, not saying a word, not blinking, just standing there, phones in hand, still recording. I couldn't breathe. Angela stood. Given what I've seen, I'm recommending temporary separation. It's in the best interest of the children for now. I suggest you stay elsewhere until the investigation is complete. Where am I supposed to go? She didn't answer. By nightfall, I was gone. I shoved what I could into my gym bag, left behind my tools, my photo albums, the little gifts the kids made me in art class. The bank app showed a drained joint account. Even my separate savings, the one I thought only I had access to, was empty. I ended up in my pickup truck parked behind the rec center. I showered in the locker room, ate free bagels from a church pantry, slept under 2 hoodies on a reclined seat. No one called. No one asked where I was. They had erased me, pixel by pixel, frame by frame, until all that was left was an unstable man with no home, no money, and no voice to defend himself. And somewhere, my kids were being told I had chosen this. I hadn't spoken to anyone I knew in weeks. Even the people from my old rig crew stopped replying. No one wants to be associated with someone flagged by family safety. I couldn't blame them. So I spent my days at the rec center or killing time at the public library, checking job boards I couldn't apply to, emailing lawyers I couldn't afford. Every message I sent got the same auto response, currently at capacity. Then one morning, I walked into a donut shop off Route 27, hoping the day-old box had something left, and I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years. Neil. I turned, and there he was, Ravi Chauhan. Leaner now, glasses instead of contacts, but still the same easy smile from the oil fields. We used to bunk 2 doors down from each other in the crew quarters. He'd quit offshore years ago to get his law degree. Holy hell, I muttered. Ravi. He clapped me on the shoulder like I hadn't just emerged from a crater. Man, you look like you've been through it. I sat down with him and didn't stop talking for nearly an hour. Everything poured out. Tessa, the staged videos, the custody ambush, the money gone without a trace. He listened, quiet, focused, didn't interrupt once. When I finally ran out of breath, he leaned forward. Did you ever sync your phone or security cameras to cloud storage? I blinked. I set it all up before I left for offshore. Motion sensors, baby cams, the doorbell camera, all linked to my email. I haven't looked at it in months. He pulled out his laptop. What's your login? I hesitated. You think there's something there? I don't think, he said, typing fast. I know. An hour later, he had over 40 saved video clips recovered from an old shared home cloud. Deleted, but not gone. One of them showed Tessa coaching Milo. No, say it slower, she said off camera. Say, I don't like being alone with Daddy. He scares me sometimes. Milo's little voice repeated it robotically. In another, Emma sat stiffly on the couch while a man paced behind the camera. I leaned in. Wait, that's Greg, Ravi confirmed. Personal trainer, right? Greg held up a tablet with something typed out. Just read it. Pretend it's acting. Your mom says it's like rehearsal. We watched another, and another, dozens. From different rooms, different days. Some of them time-stamped while I was still offshore. Greg high-fiving the kids after a good take. Tessa calling them brave. Her parents in the background nodding along. Ravi leaned back in his chair, lips tight. They've been planning this for a long time. I felt sick. They used my kids like props. He nodded. But now we use this. By that afternoon, Ravi had filed a motion for emergency custody hearing, citing parental manipulation, coercion, and psychological abuse. That night, I sat in the back of my pickup with a thin blanket, staring at the sky. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something solid beneath my feet. Not hope exactly, but proof. Real, undeniable proof that I wasn't crazy. They tried to erase me, but they forgot. I built that system. I knew where the wires ran. And now, it was all coming back online. 3 days after Ravi filed the emergency motion, we were in court. I wore my one clean button down, ironed in the rec center bathroom with the edge of a locker. Ravi showed up in a blazer, calm and sharp. We had the videos queued, transcripts ready, and copies filed. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. Tessa arrived flanked by her attorney, a corporate slick guy in a $1,000 suit, and her parents, both dressed like they were attending a charity brunch. Greg wasn't with them, but his fingerprints were all over the affidavit they filed in response. Before we begin, her lawyer said smoothly, we request a psychological evaluation of Mr. Dawson. His recent behaviors indicate unresolved trauma stemming from his time offshore, as evidenced in the Family Safety Agency report. The judge, a silver-haired man who looked bored already, raised an eyebrow. That's not uncommon for returning contractors. Is there additional concern? Tessa's lawyer produced a statement from a Dr. Harold Kessler, a psychologist with a history of court appointments. Ravi leaned toward me and whispered, Tessa's dad plays golf with Kessler every other Saturday. I've seen the country club photos. I clenched my jaw. So the deck's stacked. He nodded. But we're still playing the game. The judge approved the evaluation. I wanted to object. I wanted to scream. But Ravi put a hand on my arm, not stopping me, just grounding me. For now, the judge allowed supervised visitation until the review was complete, so I took what I could get. The next visit was at a local supervised center, set up like a playroom with cameras in every corner. I brought board games and little gifts, nothing extravagant, just things they used to like. A sketch pad for Emma, a science kit for Milo. When they walked in, they both looked smaller than I remembered. Emma sat stiffly on the couch. Milo clung to the wall like he was in trouble. Hi, I said softly. They didn't answer. I tried again. You remember that old lava lamp you broke? I found a new one. Thought we could build it together. Emma glanced up. We're not allowed to take anything home from you. Milo added. Greg said we can't trust you right now. My chest hurt in a way I didn't have words for. I'm your dad. Emma flinched like I'd said a curse word. Mom says you might try to steal us. I looked over at the monitor where the court liaison sat behind one-way glass. I wanted to yell at them, at the entire system, but I just nodded and swallowed it. The next few visits were the same. Gifts I wasn't allowed to give. Stories they wouldn't respond to. Milo asking if I was going to jail. Emma staring at the clock the whole time. Meanwhile, Greg showed up in new sneakers I recognized as a limited drop, the kind I used to save up for when Emma wanted to feel special at school. The kids had new tablets, new backpacks. Every week, something else. Ravi tried to subpoena their school counselor for testimony, delayed. The pediatrician who'd seen them for years, suddenly unavailable. Even the dentist's office said their system had been transitioned, and records weren't accessible yet. Every roadblock we hit, another one popped up. This isn't coincidence, Ravi muttered. Someone's making calls. Tessa's father? Almost definitely. It was like trying to climb a ladder where every other rung was covered in grease. And still, the court-appointed evaluator came back with his results 2 weeks later. Mr. Dawson displays signs of high-functioning PTSD, manifesting in hypervigilance and emotional suppression. While not disqualifying for parenting, these traits could impair safe decision-making under stress. Continued supervised visits recommended. Ravi threw the report on the table. It's vague on purpose. I nodded numbly. They're bleeding me dry until I give up. He looked at me carefully. Are you going to? I stared at the folder. At the signature of a man who'd never met me but had the power to decide whether I got to be a father or not. No, I said quietly. Not a damn chance. Ravi's contact, a retired cop-turned-private investigator named Jules, was quiet and fast. One Thursday morning, Ravi called and said, we've got something. Meet us at the firm. I showed up with coffee-stained jeans and 2 hours of sleep, expecting another false lead. Instead, Jules slid a flash drive across the table like it was a loaded weapon. Security footage, he said. Smoothie Cafe off Ashland and 33rd. Tessa, her parents, and your old friend Greg met there 5 days before you got back. He clicked play on the screen. There they were. Tessa, her mom and dad, and Greg, all seated around a patio table with plastic smoothies in front of them, folders open, not paper menus. These were thick, manila, with tabs. Greg pointed at something in one, then held his phone up like he was reading off instructions. Tessa's father nodded, then passed an envelope to Greg across the table. Money? by the look of it. Greg pocketed it fast. Jules paused the video. They planned this whole thing. Paper trail, timeline, even compensation. Ravi was already typing. We can use this. It confirms intent. What about Greg's background? I asked. Ravi leaned back. Funny you should ask. He opened another folder, this one thicker than mine. Gregory Allen Mercer. 2 counts of fraud, 1 battery charge in Minnesota, and a sealed domestic incident from 3 years ago. Paid fines, no jail time. He's not clean. Can we show this in court? Ravi sighed. I tried. Tessa's attorney argued the records were sealed, and the judge ruled it prejudicial to the current custody matter. Blocked. I gritted my teeth. Of course he did. And Greg's not officially part of the case, Ravi continued. No guardianship. No legal status with the kids. Just a close family friend conveniently on hand for every birthday and school pickup. It was a wall we couldn't punch through yet. And while we were digging, they were dismantling everything I had left. Tessa's father filed 3 separate anonymous complaints to my employer, claims that I was unstable, aggressive, and using narcotics. My boss, a good man, called me into the office with a tired expression. I believe you, Neil, he said, but HR doesn't care what I believe. They reassigned me to night patrol, remote stations, no crew, no daylight, no phone service. It meant fewer hours and less pay, and more importantly, no chance to make my visitation times. When I tried to explain this to the court monitor, she just nodded and said, reschedule next month. Emma and Milo were told I stopped showing up. The lies were stacking fast. Meanwhile, I lived out of the same truck, parked near a shuttered video rental store, rotating between 2 laundromats to keep my shirts from smelling like engine grease and asphalt. I started skipping meals to save gas money for court. One night, I saw Tessa in a grocery parking lot. She didn't notice me. She was loading bags into the back of Greg's car, a brand new SUV. The kids were inside, laughing about something. He reached over and brushed a crumb off her jacket like it was the most natural thing in the world, like I had never existed. I stood there behind my windshield, watching my family be quietly erased by a man who was paid to take my place. I was losing more than a custody battle. I was losing the right to even remember who I was before they rewrote the whole story. Back at Ravi's office, I slumped into the chair and rubbed my face. We have proof of conspiracy. We have motive. We have a criminal record. And no judge who cares, I muttered. Ravi closed his laptop. Not yet. There was something in his voice, sharp, certain. You think she'll crack? I asked. He nodded. Sooner or later, someone always does. Especially when they believe their version of the truth is airtight. I looked at the frozen frame of the video on the screen. Greg holding up a folder, Tessa leaning in, her father nodding. They thought they had sealed it. But what they didn't count on was that the man they buried offshore had come back with nothing left to lose. The supervised visits were down to once every 2 weeks by the time it happened. The room smelled like disinfectant and peanut butter crackers. The same court liaison sat in the corner, scribbling in a notepad like she was grading an essay. Emma sat beside the window, staring out. Milo picked at a board game with no interest. I tried again. Remember when we used to play Sorry, and you'd hide the back 4 cards under the couch cushion? Milo didn't laugh, but he glanced at me, just a flicker, then back down. After a few silent minutes, he leaned close and whispered, Greg hits mommy sometimes. I froze. What did you say? His face turned pale. Never mind. He looked toward the glass. I followed his gaze. The court monitor was watching. I didn't say another word until the visit ended, but my mind was racing. The moment I got outside, I called Ravi. She said what? He asked. Milo. He said Greg hits Tessa. Then clammed up. Ravi was quiet a second. We need that on record. How? He whispered. There's no video of the visits. I'll file to bring in a child advocate. Someone neutral. 2 days later, everything exploded at once. First came a letter from the mortgage lender. Foreclosure proceedings had started. I hadn't missed a payment, but someone had opened new credit cards in my name and never paid. My score had tanked. Second, I got a collections call about overdue charges for luxury furniture from a store in a town I'd never been to. The shipping address was Tessa's parents' vacation condo. Ravi was livid. They're burying you financially, so when you fight back, the court says you're unstable and broke. But it was the third bomb that finally turned the tide. Tessa's deposition. She was calm at first, poised. Her lawyer guided her through carefully rehearsed lines. But then Ravi leaned forward. Mrs. Dawson, were you aware of video recordings being made of your husband before the Family Safety Agency investigation? She blinked. Of course not. Ravi slid a printed still frame across the table, Tessa holding her phone toward me at the dinner table, her mother grinning in the background. What is this then? Her lips parted. That's just a photo. Camera timestamp shows it was recording for 42 seconds. Audio included. Want me to play it? She looked at her lawyer, who started to interrupt. The judge silenced him with a hand. I'm giving you one chance, Ravi said. Because if I play the full video set, and there are over 50, it will not only confirm premeditation, but also child coaching, false testimony, and conspiracy to commit custodial interference. Tessa's composure cracked. Her hands started to shake. You think Greg will take the stand for you? Ravi asked, voice quiet. With a criminal record and a cash payment on file from your father? Tessa burst into tears. They made me do it, she said, voice breaking. It was supposed to be temporary, just a way to get space. Then Greg got involved, and it all spiraled. Her lawyer hissed, "Do not speak further." But it was too late. "They coached the kids," she whispered. "My mom said if we didn't, we'd lose custody and support. My dad paid Greg to act like a father. We staged everything." The judge called a recess. I sat there stunned. When we reconvened, the entire tone had changed. Suddenly, Ravi was the one handing over folders. The court monitor's report changed overnight. The judge ordered a full review of the custody arrangement. Greg was barred from all contact with the children, and an emergency order was issued placing the kids under neutral observation. Tessa was crying, not in the rehearsed way I'd seen before. This was raw, broken. The judge looked at her for a long time. "Mrs. Dawson, you nearly destroyed this man's life. And worse, you manipulated your children to do it." She nodded, barely able to speak. When the hearing ended, Ravi turned to me. "We're not done." But the tide just turned. And for the first time in months, I walked out of court not as a visitor or a defendant, but as a father with a fighting chance. It took a month to clean up the mess, legally, financially, emotionally. The judge moved fast after Tessa's confession. Full custody was granted to me, effective immediately. The ruling cited irreparable manipulation of minors, false testimony, and coordinated psychological harm. Tessa was allowed supervised visitation only, twice a month, under a family advocate's watch. Her parents? Barred from any contact with Emma and Milo until the results of an ongoing investigation. 2 days later, a sheriff served them a subpoena. Turns out, forging financial documents and identity theft carries weight when it's tied to a child custody conspiracy. And Greg? Gone. Disappeared the same day the court order hit the system. But Ravi's investigator tracked him down in Arizona, using a fake name and running a gym under someone else's business license. He was arrested 2 weeks later, charged with fraud and parole violations. They found multiple IDs in his duffel bag and a stolen social security number tied to an open credit line. When the news reached the local paper, I barely blinked. I had other priorities. Emma and Milo moved in with me full-time, and for the first few days, it was like caring for strangers. They were skittish, unsure, asking permission to speak. Emma wouldn't sleep without the light on. Milo flinched every time I moved too fast, but we took it slow. One night, I made them pancakes for dinner, our old tradition. Milo pushed his plate away at first. Greg said syrup is bad for your brain. I raised an eyebrow and poured a puddle of maple down the center of my own stack. "Then I must be completely nuts," I said with a grin. He giggled, just a little. Emma added whipped cream to hers without saying a word, but she ate every bite. We started therapy sessions, group ones, one-on-one ones. Emma hated the first few but warmed up when her therapist let her bring a sketch pad. Milo was quieter, but one day he drew a stick figure family and added me in the center, labeled it my real home. Tessa started going to real therapy too, part of her court condition. She never fought the ruling. In one session, the court advocate said Tessa broke down while watching old videos of herself instructing the kids to lie. She said it didn't feel like her. The advocate told me. She said she didn't even recognize her own voice. I wasn't ready to forgive her, but I didn't hate her either. She showed up to her first supervised visit with letters, handwritten apologies to both Emma and Milo. She read them out loud through tears, and for the first time in a long while, the kids didn't look scared. One afternoon, I moved us into a small rental house across town. Nothing fancy, but it had clean walls, no cameras, and a backyard big enough for a trampoline. We planted a tiny garden. Emma picked lavender. Milo picked hot peppers, because they're dangerous. I picked tomatoes. Something simple. Something that grows when you just give it light and time. It was the first home that was truly ours, free from fear, from games, from the eyes that once watched us like predators in the brush. And as I tucked them in that first night, Milo mumbled, "I like it here better." I kissed his forehead. "Me too, bud," I whispered. "Me too." We didn't go back to the old house. I drove by it once, just to be sure it was real. Empty windows, overgrown grass, a broken swing in the front yard. Whatever we had there, or thought we had, was gone. It had died quietly somewhere between one lie and the next. The kids never asked to see it again. Instead, we focused forward. Emma and Milo started therapy twice a week. At first, they hated it. Emma crossed her arms and answered every question with a shrug. Milo just stared at the floor. But their counselor, a soft-spoken woman named Carla, didn't push. She gave them space, worksheets, breathing techniques. Over time, they opened up. Emma started drawing again, not just sad faces and black clouds, but animals, trees, full color worlds. She even made a comic strip called Super Emma and Captain Milo Saved Dad from the Shadow House. Milo took longer. He had nightmares for a while, dreams about Greg chasing him or about the cameras in the walls. But one morning, he ran into the kitchen and said, "Dad, I dreamed we were flying, like all of us, even you." And just like that, the tide turned. We started building routines, nightly dinners, Saturday pancake breakfasts, after-school walks to the corner ice cream shop. Sometimes Emma would forget and still glance around the room like someone was watching. Milo occasionally asked if people could still erase daddies. But less and less as time went on. As for me, I found work again. A former crew chief from the rig, Brendan, had started a private security consultancy. He called me out of the blue. "I heard what happened, man. Whole damn industry's talking about it. You want a job where nobody's filming you behind your back?" "Depends," I said. What's the pay? He laughed. Not offshore money, but decent, flexible hours. You'll be home every night. I took it. It wasn't glamorous. Site checks, risk assessments, training modules, but it let me pick up my kids from school and still make enough to rebuild slowly. The grandparents' trial started 6 months after the confession. Fraud, identity theft, child endangerment. Tessa's father lawyered up hard, tried to pin everything on Greg, who conveniently disappeared again before his own court date. But there was too much paper, too many signatures, too many transactions under my name. They were found guilty. Tessa's mom sobbed when they read the verdict. Her father stared straight ahead like he was above it all. The judge ordered restitution. Not that I expected to see a cent. Tessa didn't attend the trial. She stayed in therapy. Once, during a supervised visit, she pulled me aside while the kids played nearby. I know I can't take it back, she said quietly, but I want to do better. For them, for myself. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Just said her piece and went back to building blocks with Milo. That mattered more than any apology. Our life now is simple. I come home to laughter instead of silence. The house smells like garlic again. Emma's learning to cook. Milo has a pet turtle named Boomerang. He insists it's part of our security system. Every night, I make dinner. Some nights it's quick and messy, grilled cheese, box mac. But sometimes, when the week's been good, I make lamb stew. The first time I served it again, Emma took a bite and smiled. It tastes like before, she said softly. And that's what we're building now, not what we had, but what we deserve. Not a return, but a renewal. Each meal, each laugh, each night we sleep under the same roof without fear. It's not perfect, but it's ours. And that's enough.